On Sunday night, following a difficult North Carolina primary election, former South Bend, Indiana mayor Pete Buttigieg decided to end his presidential campaign. So now, Mayor Pete is was the very first openly gay candidate to run a major presidential campaign. He's also the first to accrue delegates, and those are actually pretty big things when it comes to LGBT rights. And so, in those ways, his campaign was historic. Now that he's out, his supporters now have to choose who to throw their weight behind in their support. And of course, in doing so, will alter the landscape of the primary going forward. So now the question is, who are they going to get behind? If Buttigieg, and he has shown, of course, that he had no path to the nomination, which is why he backed out. Now, before he did that, Morning Consult polled his supporters and asked, if Buttigieg doesn't make it, who's your number two? The results are surprising, at the very least. This new Morning Consult poll, conducted between February 23rd and 27th, said that the plurality of supporters would support Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders as their second pick for president. Now, the numbers broken down have 21% of Buttigieg supporters who participated in the poll saying that they would go for Bernie Sanders. Now, this was of 13,428 Democratic primary voters that were surveyed by this. That's not so bad, 21%. Now, let's see. Yes, by the way, I want to do a correction here. It was South Carolina. I don't know why I said North Carolina. Got my Carolinas mixed up, weirdly enough. So anyway, on social media afterwards, Pete to Bernie started trending. And that saw a lot of supporters of Buttigieg declare their intentions of supporting Bernie Sanders. So now I want to share some of those. It's kind of important. Beth said, it's official. I'm ready to go. I'm proud to have supported Pete. And I made sure, and I believe he made the decision to suspend his campaign for the right reasons. I'm officially Pete to Bernie and made my first non-Pete donation of the cycle. Well, that's awesome. Welcome to the, not me, us, Beth. Peter Severance says, as a Massachusetts voter, I love Elizabeth Warren dearly, but I'm going to vote for Bernie. Very similar platforms, but Bernie has built the most winning campaign by far. Biden has no money, no organization, and no energy, as Trump would say. Pete to Bernie, all you Pete people, please. So there you go. Now, Jordan Evans also says, I was a proud Pete Buttigieg supporter and was all in 100%. But I was for Pete for the same reason I'm now for Bernie. We can't keep playing by the same old political playbook, and I expect different results. Pete to Bernie is real, and I'm all in. And again, welcome, Jordan. And Cody Gaddis says, Pete Buttigieg was who I supported for the nominee. However, with him suspending his campaign, I am now voting for Bernie Sanders. We need a candidate who and will defeat Donald Trump. That is Bernie. I urge those who supported Pete to also support Bernie. All right. So now there are a lot of others, right? Now, I also agree with John Graziano here on Twitter when he said, I was pretty hard on old Pete, but the tide of his supporters who are now turning to Bernie is giving me hope. To all the Pete to Bernie peeps, we all deserve better than the current system. Thanks for making it happen. Absolutely. I do. Look, I love that, right? Now, will this be a gigantic boost to Bernie Sanders? Well, most support is always welcome. And it's better than that 21% support going to Amy Klobuchar, who, by the way, has dropped out. So it wouldn't go there anyway. But going to Bloomberg or Biden, which, by the way, I've got numbers on Bloomberg and Biden as well. But 19% of Buttigieg supporters said they would support Vice President Joe Biden. The same said that they would throw their weight behind Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. 17% said they would back former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg. So understand, 21% is not a huge victory, right? And in the end, it's going to benefit basically everyone sort of equally, right? Morning Consult said the division of support would amount to about 2% percentage point boost for all four candidates in national polling. Now, we'll see now if that turns out, if that poll is generally right. But I got to say this, to any Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar supporters, that want to avoid a chaotic contested convention. And by the way, I'm also adding Warren supporters, despite the fact that she is still in the race. That contested convention is only going to help Donald Trump. They're already tweeting about how corrupt the Democratic Party is and how they're going to steal it from Bernie Sanders, which is absolutely their plan. If you're going to help Republican messaging, well, that's not good. No, that's why you need to get behind Bernie Sanders. Right now, he's leading in delegates. He's looking really good going into Super Tuesday, and he's the only one that can match up and beat somebody like Donald Trump. So if you want to avoid the messiness that would basically spell the end of the Democratic Party, jump to Bernie Sanders. Listen to your peers. Consider listening to these, Pete to Bernie voters. And because here's the thing, right? I know a lot of you might take a look at Twitter and be like, are you nuts? People who supported Pete and Amy would go to Bernie Sanders? But shockingly, yes, there are a lot of people who consider, even a lot of Joe Biden supporters have Bernie Sanders as their number 2. So understand that, right? Twitter is a tiny little bubble, right? And sometimes, look, even I get oblivious to that fact, that it does not represent real life. And that voters, generally, you can't put them all in boxes, right? You got people who support Amy Klobuchar going to Bernie Sanders. You got Bernie Sanders supporters going to Klobuchar, or would have if she hadn't dropped out. I mean, it's really strange. And so, it's not surprising to see that there's a decent amount of Buttigieg supporters that are now making the transition to Bernie Sanders. And I'm only hoping that that trend continues and that we actually end up seeing more people go over to Bernie than to some of the other candidates, like Elizabeth Warren, who no longer has a path to the nomination. And so we'll see. And one more thing here is that going back to the online thing, right? Bernie Sanders supporters have been called some of the worst people on the internet. That's not at all true, of course. And once you come over to being a Sanders supporter, you will realize that this campaign is running on love and humanity and respect for each other. And is actually, instead of the Bernie bro, right, it actually boasts the most diverse working class movement in politics, where everyone, no matter who you supported, is welcome. So if you're trying to figure out, if you're on the fence, trying to figure out who to throw your support to, now that your candidate's no longer in the race, well, you're over among the people who support Bernie Sanders. All are welcome. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.